Title: The Gate of the Sky and the Journey of Trials. Once, in a land where the earth touched the sky and the stars whispered secrets to those who would listen, there existed a legend of a mysterious gate. The Gate of the Sky, they called it. A doorway to realms unknown, hidden in the clouds, beyond the reach of mortals. It was said that only the purest souls could unlock its secrets. But to reach it, one must first endure trials that tested the very essence of one's being. Our story begins with a young adventurer named Lorien. He was a wanderer, a seeker of knowledge, and a dreamer of the impossible. For years, he had heard whispers of the Gate of the Sky, and his heart yearned to find it, to prove that the legends were real. So, with nothing but his courage and a small satchel of provisions, Lorien set out on a journey that would change him forever. As he traveled across vast plains and climbed towering mountains, the first trial revealed itself. A dark forest stood before him, its trees twisting like ancient, gnarled hands reaching out to trap those who entered. The air was thick with mystery, and the path through the woods seemed to vanish at every turn. Lorien knew that the trial of the forest was one of confusion. To reach the Gate of the Sky, he would have to find his way through the maze of shadows. But how? He paused and listened. The wind whispered in his ear, carrying with it a soft melody. He followed the sound, trusting his instincts. The more he listened, the clearer the path became. With every step, the forest seemed to open up, as though the trees themselves were guiding him. At last, Lorien emerged from the forest, but his trials were far from over. The next trial came as a storm. A tempest like no other, with winds that howled like wolves and rain that struck like arrows. The storm tested Lorien's endurance. He could feel his body growing weaker with each step, but his resolve never wavered. As the storm raged on, Lorien saw a figure in the distance. A woman, cloaked in white, standing amidst the chaos. "You seek the Gate of the Sky," she said, her voice calm despite the fury of the storm. "But this trial is not one of strength. It is a trial of the heart. You must learn to endure, not with your body, but with your spirit." Lorien, exhausted and battered by the storm, knelt before the woman. He asked her, "How do I endure when everything seems to be against me?" The woman smiled gently. "You endure by finding the light within you. Even in the darkest storm, there is always a spark of light that can guide you. Find it, and it will carry you through." With newfound resolve, Lorien closed his eyes and found that spark. It was not a bright flame, but a warm glow deep within his chest, a reminder that even in the worst of trials, hope can always be found. The storm began to subside, and Lorien continued on his journey. Days turned into weeks as he climbed higher and higher into the mountains, where the air grew thin and the world seemed to shrink beneath his feet. But the Gate of the Sky was close now, and Lorien could feel its pull, like a distant song calling him home. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, Lorien reached the summit of the highest mountain. There, before him, stood the Gate of the Sky, a towering structure of silver and gold, gleaming in the light of the setting sun. It was as beautiful as it was mysterious, with symbols etched into its surface, glowing faintly in the twilight. But the final trial awaited him. The gate did not open simply because he had arrived. To unlock it, Lorien had to answer a question that would test the wisdom he had gained on his journey. A voice echoed from the gate, "What is the most important thing you have learned on your journey?" Lorien paused. He had faced so many challenges, learned so much. But what was the most important lesson? He thought back to the forest, the storm, and the mountains. And then, it came to him. "The most important thing I've learned," he said, "is that the journey itself is the answer. It is not about reaching a destination, but about growing along the way. It is the trials we face, the people we meet, and the wisdom we gain that shape us into who we are meant to be. The gate of the sky glowed brightly, its doors opening slowly. Lorien stepped forward, and as he passed through the gate, he felt a sense of peace wash over him. He had found what he sought, not in the destination, but in the journey itself. And so, Lorien's tale became a legend, a story told for generations, reminding all who hear it that the trials of life are not meant to break us, but to shape us into the people we are meant to become. The gate of the sky, once hidden in the clouds, was no longer a secret. It was a symbol of the endless journey we all must take to discover who we truly are. As Lorien stepped through the gate of the sky, the world around him seemed to shift. The air grew lighter, the atmosphere surreal, as though he had crossed into another realm entirely. The ground beneath him was soft, like clouds, and the sky above stretched endlessly in shades of purple, gold, and white, like an ethereal painting. He looked around, trying to comprehend what he was seeing. In the distance, there were floating islands, each one glowing faintly with an otherworldly light. On these islands, he saw beings, creatures both familiar and strange, moving about in harmony with the world around them. They were not human, but they carried an aura of wisdom, peace, and power that Lorien had never encountered before. A gentle voice called out to him, "Welcome, traveler." It was soft, but clear, like a breeze rustling through the leaves. Lorien turned to see an ancient figure approaching, a woman, clothed in robes of shimmering silver, her hair flowing like liquid light. Her eyes, though old with the passage of time, sparkled with youthful energy. "I am Aloria, keeper of the sky," she said, her voice echoing like the soft chime of bells. "You have passed the trials. You have learned the lessons of the heart, mind, and spirit. Now, you are ready to see what lies beyond." Lorien bowed respectfully. "I do not understand. What lies beyond? What is this place?" "This," Aloria smiled, "is the realm of pure knowledge and infinite possibility. It is a place where the boundaries of time and space cease to exist. But few can reach it, for only those who have journeyed through the trials can see it in its true form. You were meant to come here." She motioned toward the floating islands. Each island holds a key, a piece of knowledge, and a challenge. Some have come seeking power, others have come seeking answers. But only those who approach with a heart of purity can find the truth they seek. Lorien's heart raced. He had dreamed of this moment of discovering the truth that lay beyond the gate of the sky. But now, standing before it, he felt an overwhelming sense of responsibility. What should I seek, then? What is the truth I must find? Aloria's gaze softened. The truth you seek is not one to be found with your eyes. It is found within. The trials you have faced have brought you here to learn the most important lesson of all. The journey is not just about what you encounter, but about who you become in the process. Lorien nodded slowly, understanding more with each passing moment. His journey had changed him. He was no longer the same person who had set out to find the gate of the sky. He had grown stronger, wiser, and more attuned to the world around him. "The knowledge you seek will come," Aloria continued, "but first, you must face the final trial, the trial of the self." "The trial of the self?" Lorien asked, puzzled. Aloria nodded. "You have seen the challenges of the forest, the storm, and the mountains. Now, you must face the deepest part of your own soul. The greatest trial is not of the body, nor of the mind, but of the spirit. You must confront your own fears, your doubts, and your regrets. Only then will you be free to unlock the final mystery of the gate." With a wave of her hand, the landscape around Lorien shifted once more. The islands dissolved into mist, and he found himself standing alone in a vast, empty void. There were no stars, no sky, only darkness. And from the darkness, shadows began to take shape, shadows of himself. Lorian saw versions of himself, each one representing a different part of his life. There was the young, uncertain boy who had first heard the legend of the gate, filled with dreams and hopes. There was the brave adventurer, ready to face anything that came his way. And then, there were the darker versions, the ones filled with self-doubt, regret, and fear. They were the parts of him he had long buried, the parts he had hoped would never resurface. "Face me," one of the shadows said, its voice an echo of his own. "You are nothing without me. You can never escape me." Lorian stepped forward, his heart pounding in his chest. "I am not afraid of you," he said, though his voice trembled slightly. "I have already faced my fears. I have already proven myself." But the shadows laughed. "You have proven yourself to the world. But have you proven yourself to yourself? Can you truly say you are free from regret? Free from the fear that haunts you?" The darkness closed in, threatening to swallow him whole. Lorian felt the weight of his past, the mistakes he had made, the choices he regretted, the paths he had not taken. But deep within him, he felt something else, a strength, a quiet resolve. This was his final test. To let go of his fears, to embrace all that he was, both the light and the dark. "I am not defined by my past," Lorian said, his voice growing stronger. "I am defined by the choices I make today. I accept who I am, flaws and all. I am not perfect, but I am enough." With those words, the shadows began to dissipate, dissolving into the light. The darkness was lifted, and in its place, a bright light surrounded him, warm and comforting. The final trial was over. Lorian had confronted his deepest fears and accepted himself fully. The void melted away, and he was back in the realm of the sky. Aloria stood before him, her eyes filled with approval. "You have passed the trial of the self. You are ready." The sky parted, revealing a shining path that stretched into infinity. Lorian took a step forward, his heart light with peace and understanding. As he walked, he knew that the journey was never truly over. Each trial had prepared him for the next, each lesson had led him to this moment. And so, the gate of the sky was not just a door to a distant realm. It was a symbol of the endless journey we all must take to confront our inner selves, to embrace our fears, and to unlock the true potential that lies within us all. With his heart now light and his spirit at peace, Lorian continued his path, guided by the shimmering light that stretched endlessly before him. The sky above was no longer an endless expanse of clouds, but a canvas of stars, each one flickering with the promise of untold stories and possibilities. It was as if he had entered the heart of the universe itself, vast, mysterious, and filled with infinite potential. Aloria walked beside him, her presence calm and reassuring, yet the air around them hummed with a quiet power. As they walked, the path beneath their feet seemed to respond to Lorian's thoughts, shifting and changing as though the very ground was alive with the magic of the sky. "You have faced your trials," Aloria said, her voice soft like the wind. "But there is one final step before you can truly unlock the mysteries of the gate." Lorian looked up at her, his curiosity piqued. "What is it? What must I do now?" "The final step," Aloria explained, "is to understand the truth that all those who seek the gate must realize that the key to everything is not in what you seek, but in how you choose to move forward. What you have learned in your trials, the forest, the storm, the mountains, and your own heart are all pieces of a greater puzzle. You, like all those who have come before you, must now create your own path, your own future." Lorian thought deeply about her words. He had faced countless challenges, each one teaching him a different lesson, each one shaping him into someone he had never thought he could be. But now, standing at the very threshold of the sky, it was clear to him that his journey was not about finding a place or an answer. It was about discovering his true purpose, one step at a time. But how do I know what my purpose is? Lorian asked, unsure. How can I be certain I am on the right path? Aloria smiled, her gaze distant as she looked out toward the horizon. That is the beauty of the journey, Lorian. No one ever truly knows where their path will lead. It is not for us to see the end, but to walk with purpose, with intent, and with an open heart. The gate of the sky does not offer you answers. It offers you the freedom to create your own answers, to live your own story. The path ahead began to glow brighter, more vibrant. The stars seemed to move, swirling around them like a cosmic dance, casting light in every direction. As the light grew brighter, Lorian realized something incredible: the path had no boundaries. There were no walls, no borders, no end to the journey. It was a road without limits, a path that stretched into eternity. Aloria stopped and turned to face him. This is where your journey begins anew, Lorian. The gate of the sky was not just a door, but a gateway to infinite possibilities. You are no longer bound by the trials that once shaped you. Now, you must embrace the freedom to choose. The world is yours to explore, your future to create. Lorian stood in awe. He had come so far, faced so many trials, and yet, he realized now that the greatest lesson of all was that the journey was never really about reaching an end. It was about the choices he made, the courage he had, and the wisdom he had gained along the way. I understand now, Lorian said, his voice steady with newfound resolve. The gate was never just a physical place. It was a symbol of the endless possibilities that lie ahead. And it is up to me to decide where I go from here. Aloria nodded, a proud smile on her face. Exactly. Now that you have unlocked the true meaning of the gate, you are free to walk any path you desire. But remember, the key to your future lies within you. Carry the lessons of your journey with you, and let them guide you toward your next adventure. With those words, Lorian took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the universe itself in the air around him. The light of the sky shimmered in his eyes, and for the first time in his life, he felt truly free. Free from fear, free from doubt, and free to embrace the infinite possibilities before him. As he walked forward, the path before him seemed to open up into countless directions, each one glowing with promise. There was no wrong path, no right answer. Only the journey that awaited him, a journey that was uniquely his own. He turned back for a moment to look at Aloria, but she had already faded into the light, her form becoming one with the stars. Her voice echoed one last time, carried by the wind. Remember, Lorian, the journey is not the destination. It is the way you travel that matters most. And so, Lorian continued on his journey, the gate of the sky now behind him. The trials were over, but the adventure was just beginning. With each step, he knew that the world was vast, full of untold stories, challenges, and wonders waiting to be discovered. His heart was full, his mind clear, and his spirit ready for whatever came next. The future was his to create, and as he walked into the boundless horizon, he knew that the gate of the sky was not the end of his journey. It was just the beginning of a new chapter, a chapter written by his own hand. The wind began to carry a different song now, one that seemed to whisper of forgotten lands and uncharted realms. As Lorian walked on, the very air around him hummed with life, alive with the pulse of adventure. Each step he took felt like an imprint left upon the fabric of the universe itself, and with every breath, the world seemed to reveal itself to him anew. The path before him stretched on, no longer a simple trail, but a labyrinth of potential, leading toward worlds that had only existed in dreams. Each direction beckoned him with its own promise: the mysteries of the farthest stars, the depths of hidden oceans, and the secrets of the ancient earth. He felt his heart quicken with the excitement of discovery. As Lorien walked deeper into the cosmic expanse, a figure appeared before him, emerging from the mist like a vision woven from stardust. This new figure was tall and regal, with a cloak of dark velvet, embroidered with the symbols of celestial bodies. Their face was hidden beneath a hood, but their presence was undeniable, as though they held the secrets of the universe within their gaze. "You have come far, Lorien," the figure said, their voice resonating like the distant echoes of stars. "The gate has opened to you, but now, you must face the true test of a journey without end, the test of choice." Lorien stopped in his tracks, feeling the weight of the figure's words settle over him. "The test of choice?" he echoed, unsure of what they meant. "The journey you have embarked upon is not one of mere discovery," the figure continued, stepping closer. "It is one of creation. The paths ahead of you are many, but they are not preordained. Each decision you make will shape the world around you, for you are no longer a traveler following a map. You are the creator of your own destiny." The figure raised a hand, and with a subtle movement, the stars themselves seemed to shift, revealing multiple paths stretching out before Lorien. "These paths are all yours to choose. But remember, with each choice comes consequence. The question is not where you will go, but who you will become as you walk these roads." Lorien gazed at the paths, each one shimmering with its own light, each one holding promises of different futures. He felt an overwhelming sense of freedom but also of responsibility. The weight of the world seemed to settle on his shoulders once again. "How do I know which path to take?" Lorien asked, his voice filled with uncertainty. The figure smiled, though it was a smile that seemed to carry both sorrow and wisdom. "You will never know which path is the right one, for there is no such thing as a right path. Each journey holds its own lessons, its own challenges, and its own rewards. You must trust yourself, and in the end, it is not the destination that will matter most. It is the person you become as you walk." With that, the figure stepped back, fading into the mist like the last remnants of a dream. The path ahead of Lorien stretched on, now more vast and uncertain than ever before. His heart swelled with the knowledge that the future was entirely in his hands. The choices were his, and with each step, he would shape his own story. Lorien began his journey along the path that had caught his attention, the one bathed in a soft, pale light. As he walked, the air grew cooler, and the landscape shifted around him. The sky above was now a deep indigo, filled with swirling constellations that seemed to pulse with energy. The ground beneath him was a pale gray, stretching into a vast, barren expanse. In the distance, he could hear the faint sound of voices, as if the wind itself was carrying echoes of a forgotten time. The path he followed led him into a valley surrounded by jagged cliffs. At the foot of one of these cliffs, Lorien saw a city, its walls built from smooth stone, glowing faintly in the twilight. But as he approached, he realized that the city was not a city of people. It was a city of memories. He could see figures walking the streets, but they were not living. They were shadows, flickers of people who once were, but no longer existed in the world of the living. The city was the land of echoes, a place where the past lingered, waiting for someone to listen. Lorien ventured deeper into the city, the sound of the voices growing louder, clearer. They whispered to him, calling him by name, reminding him of forgotten moments and lost time. The streets were lined with buildings that seemed to be made of pure light, shimmering and shifting, as if they were never truly fixed in one place. As Lorien walked through the city, he saw figures that seemed familiar. Faces of people he had once known, places he had been, moments that had long since faded from his memory. The echoes of his past followed him like shadows, each one a reminder of who he had been, of choices he had made, and the people who had come and gone from his life. At the center of the city stood a large tower, its peak lost in the clouds. The tower was the source of the echoes, a place where memories were stored and where time seemed to stand still. Lorien knew that he had to enter the tower to understand the nature of this place, to learn why the echoes of the past called to him. As he entered the tower, he was greeted by a figure standing at the top of the stairs. This figure was shrouded in a cloak of flowing silver, their face hidden by a mask. They did not speak, but Lorien could sense that they were waiting for him. "You have come to the land of echoes," the figure finally spoke, their voice calm and steady. "Here, you will face the moments that shaped you, the memories that have remained with you throughout your journey. But beware, the echoes will not always be kind. They will show you the truth, but the truth can be a heavy burden to bear." Lorien nodded, understanding what he must do. He had walked the path of discovery, and now he had to confront the echoes of his past. It was time to face the moments he had long buried, the regrets and fears he had tried to forget. As he ascended the stairs, the echoes began to swirl around him, each one a fragment of his life. The past was alive in this place, and Lorien knew that his choices would shape not only his future, but also his understanding of who he was and what he had become. The higher Lorien climbed the tower, the more vivid the echoes of his past became. The air grew thick with memories, swirling around him like mist, each one taking form, as if trying to reach out and touch him. He could hear voices, familiar and distant, calling his name, whispering truths and regrets. Every step brought him closer to understanding the weight of his choices, the consequences of the paths he had taken. At the top of the tower, the figure in silver awaited him, their masks still hiding their face. They did not speak, but their presence seemed to invite Lorien forward. With a deep breath, Lorien stepped into the chamber, and suddenly, the walls shimmered with light. The echoes intensified, and he found himself surrounded by scenes from his past, scenes he had long forgotten or deliberately pushed away. They were not just memories but living moments, as though he had been pulled back in time, reliving the moments that had shaped him. There was a moment from his childhood, when he had first stood before his father, eager to prove himself. He remembered the weight of his father's gaze, the expectation that he would follow in his footsteps, that he would carry the legacy of their family. Lorien had felt proud then, yet conflicted, unsure if he truly wanted that life. The scene shifted, and Lorien found himself in a familiar forest, standing before a crossroads. He had been at this very place years ago, lost in thought, wondering whether to continue down the path he had chosen or to forge a new one. He had chosen the road less traveled, but now, looking at the fork in the road, he wondered if it had been the right decision. His heart ached with the uncertainty of that moment. Suddenly, the scene darkened, and Lorien found himself standing before the figure of someone he had loved deeply. Someone who had once been his closest companion, but whom he had lost along the way. The memory was painful, for it reminded him of a choice he had made in the heat of passion, a choice that had torn them apart. The regret, the guilt, weighed heavily on his chest. Lorien stumbled back, his heart pounding. "No, not again," he whispered, his voice barely audible over the rush of the memories. "I can't undo these mistakes. I can't fix the past." The figure in silver spoke at last, their voice gentle but firm. "You cannot change what has been, Lorien. But the past is not your prison. It is only a part of who you are, not the whole of you. The truth lies in what you do next. The choices you made shaped you, yes, but they do not define you. You are not your regrets. You are not your past." Lorien felt the weight of the figure's words sink in. The echoes of his past were not something to be feared or rejected, but something to be understood. His mistakes, his regrets, they were part of the journey, part of the person he had become. And while they would always be with him, they did not have to control him. Lorien stood tall, breathing deeply, as the echoes faded into the distance, their voices quieting. The chamber around him grew calm, and the figure in silver slowly lowered their hood, revealing a face that was not a face at all, just a reflection of the stars, a pattern of constellations that seemed to shift and move with the rhythm of the universe. "You are ready now," the figure said, their voice echoing like the sound of distant stars. "You have faced the shadows of your past, and you have learned that the only true path is the one you create. Your journey is not determined by what you have done, but by what you choose to do next. The future is yours to shape, Lorien." With those words, the figure began to fade, dissolving into the very fabric of the universe itself. The tower seemed to dissolve with them, and Lorien was left standing in an empty void, his mind clearer than it had ever been before. As the last of the echoes faded, Lorien found himself standing once more at the base of the tower, gazing up at the sky. The stars had shifted again, now brighter and more numerous, like 1,000 lights guiding him toward an unknown destination. He realized that this was the moment he had been waiting for, the moment when he would choose the next path in his journey. The land of echoes had shown him the weight of his past, but it had also given him the clarity to understand that the future was not set. The path ahead would not be free of challenges, but it would be his to navigate, his to create. Lorien looked up at the sky, feeling a sense of purpose swell within him. He knew that he would continue his journey, not to escape the past, but to embrace it as part of the larger story of his life. He had faced the shadows of his past, and now, it was time to embrace the light of the future. The stars above began to shift, creating a path, a starbound road that seemed to lead beyond the horizon. Without hesitation, Lorien began walking, the road unfolding beneath his feet as though the universe itself was opening up for him. As he walked, the wind whispered in his ear, carrying with it the sounds of distant worlds, calling him forward. There were many paths to choose from, many journeys to undertake, but Lorien now knew that the key to his future lay not in the destination, but in the courage to take the next step, to move forward with an open heart and mind. The gate of the sky had not been the end of his journey, but only the beginning. With each step he took, he would continue to shape the story of his life, creating new beginnings, new adventures, and new lessons along the way. The future was no longer a mystery to be solved, but a story to be written. And Lorien was ready to begin. Lorien walked through the starlit path, each step echoing in the silence of the vast universe that stretched before him. His heart, once heavy with doubt, now beat with the rhythm of a newfound purpose. As he journeyed, the stars above seemed to shift and flicker, illuminating the way forward like beacons guiding him through the darkness. But with each step, he could sense the growing weight of something ancient, something that watched from afar, waiting. Days passed, or perhaps it was only hours. Time felt distorted in this place. The land around him began to change. The starbound road twisted and turned, leading him deeper into a forest of towering trees whose bark shimmered like the night sky. The leaves, golden and silver, glowed with an ethereal light, casting long shadows on the ground. Lorien halted before a massive tree, its roots gnarled and twisted, stretching far beneath the earth. A voice, soft as the breeze but powerful like the tides, reached out to him from within the tree. "Lorien," it whispered, calling his name with a tenderness he had never known. He stepped closer, his breath steady, but his senses alert. The voice seemed to be coming from the very heart of the tree, as though the tree itself had awakened. The air was thick with magic, ancient and wise, a force beyond his understanding. "You seek to journey onward," the voice continued, "but the path ahead is not one to be taken lightly. Many have tried to cross, and many have failed. Lorian's heart quickened, but he remained calm. What is this place? What lies beyond the forest? The voice responded, its tone gentle yet filled with gravity. This is the threshold of the forgotten, where those who have lost their way come to seek redemption. And those who are brave enough to face the trials of their soul walk the path to greatness. But be warned, for the road is fraught with challenges. Only those who understand themselves and the forces that shape their destiny can walk it without losing their way. Lorian stood in silence, his mind racing. The path ahead was not one of simplicity or certainty. It would demand much of him. But for the first time in his journey, he did not feel fear. He felt a deep, resonant connection to the forest, to the stars above, to everything he had encountered so far. This was the next step in his evolution, the next trial in his quest. I am ready, he said, more to himself than to the tree. The voice hummed in approval. Then you must answer the call of the unknown. To move forward, you must face the trial of reflection. Look into the waters of the forgotten pond, and you will see the truth of your soul. Be prepared, for the truth may not be what you expect. With a deep breath, Lorian walked forward, the path narrowing as he approached the clearing where the pond lay. The water was as still as glass, reflecting the stars above with perfect clarity. The surface shimmered, almost beckoning him to look into its depths. Lorian knelt beside the pond, his reflection rippling as he gazed into the water. At first, he saw only himself, a young man, strong but burdened by the weight of his past. But as his gaze deepened, the reflection began to change. He saw himself as a child, eager and innocent, unaware of the challenges to come. Then, he saw the teenager full of ambition, eager to prove himself, yet haunted by the doubt that lingered in his heart. The reflection continued to shift. Lorian saw moments he had forgotten, choices he had made out of fear, regrets he had carried for so long. Each shift brought a new image, each one reflecting a different aspect of his life. The pain of loss, the joy of discovery, the agony of betrayal. The hope of new beginnings, they were all there, floating in the water like fragmented pieces of his soul. But amidst the fragments, there was something else, something darker, deeper. Lorian saw a vision of himself standing alone, surrounded by shadows, the weight of the world pressing down on his shoulders. It was a vision of defeat, of a man who had given up, lost to the darkness that had once been his companion. His heart raced, and the weight of the vision threatened to crush him. Was this his true destiny? To succumb to the shadows, to become a mere echo of his former self? But then, a voice whispered through the waters, soft but firm, "The darkness is not your end, Lorian. It is a part of you, but it does not define you." The reflection shifted once more, and Lorian saw himself standing in the light, his face determined, his heart open to the future. The shadows did not vanish, but they no longer consumed him. He stood tall, unbroken, his journey still unfolding before him. Lorian stood up, feeling a sense of peace wash over him. The trial of reflection had not been about finding answers, but about understanding the complexities of his soul. He was not defined by his past, nor by the darkness that had once threatened to swallow him. He was more than the sum of his mistakes and regrets. As the stars above twinkled brighter, the trees around him seemed to stir with life, their leaves rustling in approval. The path ahead was clearer now, though still uncertain. But Lorian no longer feared it. He had faced the trial, and now he understood that the true power lay in his ability to embrace both the light and the shadow within him. With renewed strength, he turned away from the pond and began walking again, the road ahead stretching out like an endless tapestry of possibility. As Lorian ventured deeper into the forest, the air became heavy with the scent of ancient wood and the hum of untold magic. Each step seemed to echo with the weight of history, and the forest whispered around him, telling stories of those who had walked this path before. The road eventually led him to a great divide. Two towering gates, each made of intricately woven vines and adorned with gemstones that pulsed with a soft, internal light. One gate shimmered with silver, while the other glowed with an ethereal, golden hue. The gates stood tall and silent, as if awaiting his decision. Lorien stopped before them, unsure of which gate to choose. Each seemed to lead in a different direction, to a different kind of future. A voice broke through the silence, familiar and wise. "The gates do not choose you," the voice said, the same voice of the tree that had guided him before. "You must choose the path you will walk. And understand that every choice carries with it a new trial, a new chapter in your story." Lorien closed his eyes and breathed deeply, feeling the energy of both gates as they called to him. The silver gate spoke of order, of knowledge and mastery. The golden gate whispered of freedom, of untamed possibilities and the unknown. Both paths held promise, but both were fraught with their own challenges. He stood in stillness, weighing his options, until at last, he understood. The path was not about choosing between right and wrong, or between comfort and danger. It was about choosing the path that would push him to grow, to learn, and to evolve. With a determined breath, Lorien reached out and grasped the handle of the golden gate. The moment Lorien's hand touched the golden gate, a surge of energy rushed through him, as if the very fabric of reality itself responded to his decision. The gate groaned softly, its intricate vines shifting and parting, revealing a passage leading into a shimmering light. Lorien stepped forward, feeling both exhilarated and uncertain. What awaited him on the other side of the gate? Only time would tell. As he passed through the gate, the air around him shifted. The forest behind him faded into nothingness, and he found himself standing in a vast, open space. The ground beneath his feet was soft and golden, like the finest sand, and the sky above was an endless expanse of deep violet and starry constellations. The landscape was otherworldly, a dreamlike realm where time and space seemed to bend. Before him stood a figure cloaked in golden light, its form shimmering like the horizon at dawn. It was neither man nor woman but something in between, an ethereal presence that radiated both strength and serenity. The figure's eyes, glowing with a calm, steady light, met Lorien's. "You have crossed the threshold, young traveler," the figure spoke, its voice like a melody that resonated with his very soul. "The gate of uncertainty leads to the realm of possibilities, where your journey will truly begin." Lorien felt a chill of awe ripple down his spine. This was no ordinary figure, it was a guardian of this place, a being of immense power and wisdom. "Who are you?" he asked, his voice steady but filled with curiosity. "I am a keeper of the path," the figure replied. "I have watched over countless souls who have chosen to walk the road of the unknown. Each one of them has faced trials that tested their limits, their courage, and their will. And now, it is your turn." Lorien's heart pounded. He had faced many challenges so far, but this new realm felt different. The air itself seemed to hum with ancient power. "What trials await me here?" he asked, his voice steady despite the fear creeping into his chest. "The trials are not as you might expect," the keeper said, its eyes glimmering with both kindness and sternness. "They are not physical tests, nor are they battles to be fought with sword or shield. The trials here will test your very essence, your understanding of who you are and what you truly seek." Lorien nodded slowly, understanding that this journey would require more than just strength. It would demand clarity, wisdom, and self-reflection in ways he had never imagined. "To begin," the keeper continued, "you must face the trial of the heart. It is a trial that will reveal your deepest desires, your greatest fears, and the truth that lies within your soul. Only by confronting your heart can you move forward and embrace the true path that awaits you. Without another word, the keeper gestured, and the space around them shifted. The landscape transformed, and Lorien found himself standing at the edge of a vast, still lake. The waters of the lake were smooth as glass, reflecting the sky above, but something was different. In the center of the lake stood an island, and on the island was a single tree, its branches adorned with glistening crystals that sparkled in the soft light. Lorien felt an overwhelming pull toward the island, a sense of urgency that he could not explain. Without hesitation, he stepped forward, walking toward the water's edge. But as he did, the surface of the lake rippled, and a voice echoed in his mind, soft but insistent. Do you seek the truth, Lorien? Do you seek to know what lies beneath the surface of your own soul? Lorien stopped, his heart racing. The voice was familiar, but he could not place it. It was a voice that had been with him for as long as he could remember, a whisper in the back of his mind that had guided him in moments of doubt. Who are you? He asked, his voice trembling slightly. The voice responded, its tone warm and comforting. I am the voice of your heart, Lorien. I have been with you from the very beginning, guiding you when you needed it most. And now, I am here to help you face the trial of the heart. Lorien's eyes widened in realization. The voice he had heard in his moments of uncertainty, the quiet whispers that had steered him toward the choices he had made, was not some external force. It was a part of him, a reflection of his own soul. And now, that part of him was asking him to confront his deepest truths. With a deep breath, Lorien stepped into the water. The coldness of the lake sent a shiver through his body, but he pressed on, walking toward the island. Each step brought him closer to the tree, but with every step, the voice grew louder in his mind. What do you truly desire, Lorien? What is it that you seek on this journey? Lorien paused, standing in the shallows of the lake, the water swirling around his feet. He closed his eyes and allowed the question to wash over him. The answer had always been there, just beneath the surface, waiting for him to acknowledge it. I seek purpose, he whispered. I seek to understand my place in this world, to find my true path, and to embrace the destiny that lies before me. I seek to be more than I was, to grow and to evolve. The voice within him sighed, a sound that was both a release and an affirmation. And what do you fear, Lorien? What is it that holds you back from fully embracing your journey? The question struck him deeply, and for a moment, he hesitated. The fear was always there, lurking beneath the surface, a shadow that he had tried to ignore. But now, he had no choice but to face it. I fear failure, he admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. I fear that I will not be able to live up to the expectations of others, or even my own. I fear that I will lose myself along the way, that the darkness will overtake me, and I will not be able to return. The voice was silent for a long moment. Then, it spoke again, soft and reassuring. Your fears are not to be denied, Lorien. They are a part of you, and they will always be with you. But you must not let them control you. To walk the path ahead, you must learn to embrace both your light and your shadow. Only then will you be able to find your true purpose. Lorien nodded, feeling the weight of those words settle deep within him. He had spent so long running from his fears, trying to outrun the darkness that threatened to consume him. But now, he understood. He could not walk this path by denying what was within him. He had to accept it, both the light and the dark, and allow it to shape his journey. With that realization, Lorien continued toward the island, his steps lighter, his heart more at peace. The tree at the center of the island seemed to beckon him, its crystalline branches shimmering with a radiant glow. He knew that the answers he sought were within his reach, and that the journey was far from over. Lorian reached the island and stood before the tree. As he gazed at its crystal-adorned branches, the air around him shimmered, and a deep, resonant voice filled the space. "You have faced the trial of the heart," the voice said. "And now, you are ready for what comes next." As Lorian stood before the shimmering tree, a sense of anticipation filled the air. The tree seemed to pulse with a life of its own, its crystal branches swaying as if responding to his presence. The voice, deep and resonant, continued to speak, reverberating through the space around him. "You have faced your heart, Lorian, and now you stand before the tree of knowledge. This tree does not simply offer answers, it offers understanding. The truth you seek lies in your connection to this realm and your journey through it." Lorian reached out tentatively, his fingers brushing the cool, crystalline bark. The moment his skin made contact, a surge of energy coursed through him, filling his body with warmth and a profound sense of knowing. His vision blurred, and the world around him seemed to dissolve, leaving only the light of the tree. Images flooded his mind, visions of places he had never been, faces he did not recognize, and experiences that were not his own. He saw himself standing before the gate of uncertainty again, but this time, he was not alone. Beside him stood a woman with dark, flowing hair and piercing green eyes. They were traveling together, facing challenges, supporting each other, but always moving forward. A voice echoed through his mind, not the deep, resonant one from before, but a gentler voice, softer and filled with warmth. "This is your true path, Lorian. You are not meant to walk this journey alone. There are others, just as lost and just as uncertain as you are. But together, you can face the trials ahead." The vision shifted, and Lorian found himself standing in a vast, storm-swept field. He was alone again, but this time, the wind howled around him, and the sky was filled with swirling, dark clouds. The storm seemed endless, its fury unrelenting, and yet, he did not fear it. He stood strong, determined, ready to face whatever came. The voice spoke again, this time tinged with urgency. "Your trials will test not just your heart, but your resolve. You will face storms, Lorian. Storms that will challenge everything you believe. But remember, you are not defined by the trials you face, but by how you rise from them." Lorian's heart pounded as the visions continued, each one more vivid and intense than the last. He saw himself standing at the foot of a towering mountain, a path leading up into the clouds. His breath was labored, his body bruised and battered, but his eyes were set on the summit. He had climbed far, and yet, the peak still seemed so distant. "You will climb this mountain, Lorian," the voice said softly, as if speaking directly to his soul. "And when you reach the top, you will understand why you have come this far. Your purpose is not just to reach the summit but to embrace the journey itself." The visions faded, leaving Lorian standing alone once again before the tree. The cool breeze whispered through the leaves, and the shimmering crystals sparkled in the twilight. His heart still raced from the intensity of what he had seen, and yet, there was a sense of peace in him now. The tree had not given him all the answers, but it had shown him something deeper, a truth that had been buried inside him all along. The voice, now calm and gentle, spoke once more. "You are ready, Lorian. Ready to continue your journey, not as the person who stepped through the gate of uncertainty, but as the one who has begun to understand what lies beyond it." Lorian stepped back from the tree, feeling a sense of clarity settle over him. He was no longer the boy who had set out on this journey full of questions and doubts. He was something more, a traveler with purpose, a seeker of truth, and someone who had learned that the journey was not just about reaching the destination, but about discovering who he was along the way. The keeper of the path reappeared before him, standing in the same golden light as before. There was a knowing smile on their face, as if they had been watching Lorian's transformation from afar. "You have passed the trial of the heart," the keeper said, their voice filled with approval. "Now, the true path lies before you. It will not be easy, but you are no longer the same person who started this journey. You have embraced your fears and your desires, and in doing so, you have unlocked the strength within you." Lorian nodded, feeling the weight of those words. He was not the same. He had changed, and the path ahead, though still uncertain, was no longer a place of fear and confusion. It was a place of possibility, where he could forge his destiny, whatever it may be. "The trials will grow more challenging," the keeper warned, their tone turning serious. "But remember, you are not alone. You will meet others along the way, companions who will walk with you, who will help you when you falter. And you will help them in return." Lorian's thoughts turned to the woman he had seen in his visions, the one who had stood by his side, walking with him through the trials. He didn't know who she was, or when he would meet her, but he knew now that he would. And together, they would face the challenges that awaited them. The keeper extended their hand, and before Lorian could speak, they placed a small, glowing amulet in his palm. The amulet was warm to the touch, its surface etched with symbols he did not recognize. "This is the amulet of the path," the keeper explained. "It will guide you when you are lost and protect you when you are in danger. But remember, it is not just a tool. It is a reminder that you are the one who chooses your path. Trust in yourself, and you will always find your way." Lorian closed his fingers around the amulet, feeling its warmth spread through his hand. It was a small, simple thing, but it held immense power, the power of choice, of trust, and of the journey that lay ahead. "Thank you," Lorian said, his voice steady and filled with gratitude. The keeper nodded. "The time has come for you to continue. The gate of uncertainty is behind you, and the path forward lies ahead. Walk it with courage, Lorian. Walk it with your heart." With that, the keeper faded into the golden light, leaving Lorian standing alone once again at the edge of the lake. The shimmering tree, the golden light, the vast sky, all of it was now behind him. But in his heart, he carried the lessons he had learned and the strength he had found. The trials were far from over, but Lorian was ready. He took a deep breath, looked ahead, and stepped forward, his journey continuing under the vast, star-filled sky. The trials would come, the storms would rage, but Lorian knew now that he would rise to meet them. As Lorian walked onward, he felt the weight of the world on his shoulders, yet the burdens seemed lighter than before. Each step carried him closer to the unknown, but he no longer feared what he could not see. The path before him was still shrouded in mystery, but it was his to walk, and he would face whatever came with the strength of his heart. And so, Lorian's journey continued, with the gate of uncertainty behind him, the trials ahead, and his heart open to whatever lay in the distance. Days passed as Lorian walked through the wilderness, his mind filled with the wisdom imparted by the tree. His steps were steady, each one carrying him farther from the gate of uncertainty and closer to whatever awaited him. The air around him was cool, and the earth beneath his feet was firm, as if the very ground was offering its support. Yet, he felt an emptiness deep within him, an unspoken yearning for something or someone that he could not yet understand. As he crossed a vast plain, he saw a figure in the distance. It was a person, standing alone beneath the sky, their silhouette framed by the rising sun. Lorian felt a stirring within him. Something told him that this meeting was no mere coincidence. He quickened his pace, his heart pounding in anticipation. As he drew closer, the figure became clearer, a young woman, her hair flowing like a river of midnight, her eyes bright and piercing. She stood with a calm composure, as if she had been waiting for him all along. When Lorian reached her, she did not speak immediately. Instead, she regarded him with a measured gaze, as if assessing him. For a moment, they simply stood in silence, the wind carrying the scent of distant flowers. "Who are you?" Lorien asked, his voice breaking the stillness. The woman smiled faintly, a glimmer of recognition in her eyes. "I am a traveler, much like you," she said. "But unlike you, I have been walking this path for many years. I know the trials that await us, and I know that they are not easy." Lorien felt a surge of connection. There was something about her, a depth to her presence that resonated with his own experiences. He could sense that she, too, had faced her own trials, perhaps even more difficult than his own. "You've seen the tree," she continued, her voice soft but certain. "You know the truth that lies within you. But the journey is far from over. There is much you have yet to discover about yourself and the world around you." Lorien nodded, feeling the weight of her words. He had already learned so much, and yet, it seemed as though there was still so much more to uncover. "Why are you here?" Lorien asked. "Are you also seeking the trials of the heart?" The woman smiled again, a hint of sadness in her expression. "I am not seeking the trials, Lorien. I have already faced them. But I am here to help you, to guide you when the path becomes unclear. You will need others to walk with you. Together, we can face whatever challenges lie ahead." Lorien felt a sense of relief wash over him. For the first time in his journey, he did not feel alone. The trials were ahead, yes, but now he knew that there would be someone by his side. Someone who understood the struggle, someone who could offer guidance when the way forward seemed uncertain. "I don't know where the path leads," Lorien said quietly. "But I know I can't face it alone." The woman nodded, her eyes reflecting the same uncertainty that Lorien felt. "None of us can," she said softly. "We may be travelers on different paths, but our journeys are intertwined. Together, we will discover what lies beyond the trials. And when we face the darkness, we will do so not as strangers, but as allies." Lorien looked at her, a sense of trust forming between them. He had no idea who she was or where her journey had taken her, but he knew that their paths were meant to cross. Together, they would face the challenges that awaited them. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting the sky in hues of gold and purple, Lorien and the woman continued their journey together. The future was unknown, the trials still ahead, but for the first time in his journey, Lorien felt a glimmer of hope. The road ahead grew more treacherous as the days passed. The landscape began to shift, the lush greenery of the plains giving way to a dark, foreboding forest. The trees here were tall and twisted, their branches reaching out like gnarled fingers. The air grew heavy, thick with the scent of damp earth and the oppressive silence of the forest. Lorien and the woman, whose name was Ailira, walked side by side, their steps cautious as they moved deeper into the forest. There was an unease in the air, a sense that they were being watched, though neither of them could see who or what might be observing them. "The trial of the shadows," Ailira murmured, her voice low. "We are entering the heart of it now. This forest is a place where the darkness tests the soul. It is here that our fears and doubts will manifest. We must remain strong, or the shadows will consume us." Lorien's heart raced. He had heard of such trials where the mind itself became the enemy, where the darkness within could take form and turn against him. He had faced physical challenges before, but this was something different. This was a trial of the spirit. They pressed on, their path growing steeper as the forest deepened. The trees seemed to close in around them, their trunks thick with moss and their roots twisted like serpents. A chill settled over them, and Lorien felt the weight of his own fears rising within him. The first sign of the trial came suddenly. Ailira stopped in her tracks, her expression faltering. She glanced at Lorien, her face pale. "Do you hear it?" she whispered, her voice trembling. Lorien strained his ears, but at first, he heard nothing. Then, faintly, a low whispering began, drifting through the trees. It was soft at first, like the rustling of leaves, but then it grew louder, words spoken in a language he could not understand. The whispers seemed to come from all directions, echoing through the forest and rattling his nerves. "They're here," Ailira said, her eyes widening with fear. "The shadows have come." Lorien felt his heart begin to race. The air grew heavier, and the shadows around them seemed to darken, twisting and warping into unnatural shapes. He could feel them, voices of doubt, of fear, of uncertainty echoing within his mind. "You are not enough," a voice whispered, low and insidious. "You will fail. You are weak." Lorien clenched his fists, fighting the urge to succumb to the darkness that threatened to consume him. But the voices did not stop. They grew louder, more insistent, each one feeding his doubts, his insecurities. "You will never succeed," the voices taunted. "You are not worthy of the path you have chosen." But then, something shifted. Lorien's mind flashed back to the tree of knowledge, the warmth of the crystal bark, the voice of wisdom that had guided him. He remembered the words of the keeper, the lessons he had learned about trust, about his own strength. "No," he thought. "I am not weak. I have faced my fears before, and I will face them again. The path I walk is mine to choose." With a deep breath, Lorien stepped forward, pushing through the darkness. The shadows recoiled as he moved, their whispers fading, replaced by the steady beat of his heart. Beside him, Ailira nodded, her face determined once more. "We are not defined by the shadows," she said. "We define ourselves by how we face them." Together, they walked deeper into the forest, the shadows shrinking as their resolve grew stronger. The trial of the shadows had begun, but Lorien knew now that he would not be consumed. He would face his fears and emerge from this darkness stronger than before. That's the end of today's story. See you.